Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
If you're a fan of comic books and comic book conventions, Daytona Beach Comic Con needs to be on your list of must-attend events. It's a show that actually focuses on comic books. Imagine that! This year's event is happening on Saturday, September the 6th, and Sunday, September the 7th. Silverline creators will be there, so we'll see you at the show. If you find yourself in the Orlando area, and let's be honest, doesn't everyone come to Orlando for the House of Mouse? Head over to Coliseum of Comics to get your comic book fix. Be sure to check out their location on East Colonial Drive, where they carry a wide selection of independent comics, including Silverline books. Stop by and don't forget to tell them Silverline sent you. Hey, if you're an independent comic creator looking to get your comic printed, look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our comics and do a fantastic job. They can even print special edition covers. When you reach out to them, be sure to tell them Silverline sent you. Looking for a bold way to boost your business? Advertise with Silverline Comics, reaching readers across the U.S. and around the world. Affordable rates, passionate fans, and national and international exposure, all packed inside thrilling, action-packed comics. All ads must be PG-13, perfect for reaching all ages. Spots are limited. Grab your ad space today and become part of the adventure. Silverline Comics, where adventure lives and your brand thrives. Email us at silverlinepublishingllc@gmail.com for more information. And make mine Silverline.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday nights as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello, Internet, and welcome to That Silverline Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, joined as always by David Rios.
Hello.
Ron Fortier. And a special guest and returning Wednesday Whammer, Brent Larson.
Yeah.
And of course, tonight we'll be talking about Kayless, Achilles Has Landed, issue number 3. The third issue in the second volume in the Kayless ongoing series, multiverse franchise, all that fun stuff. We still have 23 hours left to go for pre-orders, so if you want to go ahead and get yours in that window, now is the time to do so. While we have Brent here, why don't we pass it on to you so you can answer the question of tonight's show. What is a Kayless?
What is a Kayless? It's funny because when I first launched the book, way back in, what was that, 2018 or something like that, I had a couple of people ask me, and I just did not want to tell them because I felt like it was a big secret. And thankfully, a lot's happened since then. There was a pandemic, but also I just got impatient, so I will tell you. So that is what happens when you do a book a year. But Kayless is actually short for a Latin term, the Caelesti Via, which actually refers to, which is Latin for the shining path. How it got that name is something I'm still not quite ready to reveal, but what it actually refers to in the book is a rift in space that was discovered in the 1950s by the CIA. I do explain why they would ever care about something like that. I'll let you read back issues for that. But they decide they need to start their own space program because they assume rightly that it is actually like a rift to another place. And with whatever history we know, limited history we know of the CIA, during that time they're very paranoid, and the idea of another world would cause them to immediately think we need to get some Americans up there. So they sent their own astronauts up in the 60s through this rift, hoping to basically establish a new American colony. Unfortunately, the astronauts they sent up disappeared, and the rift itself also seemed to disappear. So they covered it up, and that was the end of that. Nobody knew what the Kayless rift was until today, when the rift spits out one of the astronauts that they sent up, crash lands to Earth, crawls out of this big gaping hole seemingly unharmed, and starts his quest, which we then detail throughout the rest of the story and will continue until the end, which is he really wants to get back up to the Kayless rift. That's the story of Kayless in as about a sizable nutshell as I can cobble together for you right now. So
Perfect. I love it. I mean, it has a lot of my favorite things, which are sci-fi, weird, retro-futuristic government conspiracies, very like Kojima Metal Gear Solid-esque. As well as kind of the idea of like hidden space or extra-dimensional worlds. I like a lot of I like Metal Gear Solid and I like Destiny, and there's definitely like Kayless is a fun merging of both those things that I like.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously this is Achilles Has Landed number 3. This is essentially volume 2. And you've said that you plan on going on, until the end or however long it takes you to write it. Is there a plan on how many volumes or continued issues you'll be writing, or are you going to try and write this out as long as you can?
No, I don't think I have the patience or that many years of life left, actually. I actually did figure this out, that my original thought was, I have enough story to fill in 70 issues. It occurred to me that the pace I'm going, I will be well into my 100th birthday before that would happen. So I've actually, I've done some planning. I know how the story is going to end, and essentially probably what we're looking at is, like you mentioned, this is the second series that we're crowdfunding right now, the third issue, which is called Achilles Has Landed. After that, I'm going to do my plan right now is to do 2 more 3-issue arcs. That'll be the end of it. So we're talking after this one, after Achilles Has Landed is over, probably 6 more issues. So
okay,
that's my plan. And a lot can happen, as we all know. But I think that's reasonable enough that people will get a full story. I'm pretty excited. It's occurred to me, like I'm working on another Silverline title called Cape Town. That story, it's about superheroes or kind of wannabe superheroes. I can probably tell 50 different stories as far as that book goes. But with this one, I really only have one in mind. I know exactly how it's going to end. I will never let anyone else finish it for me. So if I get hit by a truck sometime soon, I'm sorry, you guys are out of luck. And that's the way it goes. But barring that admittedly unlikely scenario, you will hold in your hands eventually the final issue of Kayless. So,
yeah, that's great. Reminds me, makes me think of the creator of D. Gray Man. she was writing that and had a car accident where she literally fell off a cliff and didn't let anyone else finish the story. So she's like, all right, we'll put this on hiatus. And then 5 years later wrote the rest of it.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's great that people stuck with her that long. So we'll see. I'm going to really try hard not to test anyone's patience on this. I realize that this is a small independent comic, and I'll take any interest anyone throws my way. And I try to write this book with an adult sensibility, frankly, mostly because I just like reading those kind of comics. That's the kind of story I want to tell. And so if people can, be able to wait for each successive chapter, then yes, I'll do my best.
Yeah, that is one of the, I guess, joys and struggles of being independent, is that it's entirely up to us. The great thing is that all the storytelling is entirely up to us. The terrible thing is that all the creation is entirely up to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can't hire a bullpen of 30 different artists to take on different pages at different times.
Yeah, that's true. I will say the art for this book is really solid. I've never actually been tempted to try to find another artist. And what's funny too is I'm getting just as much of a kick out of reading books that I've only just discovered that came out 10, 15 years ago. So in a way, ideally, I would love it if someone recognize or finds this comic somehow over the next 2 years and reads them all together and thinks, oh, this isn't half bad. Or maybe that's the best I can hope for it.
I mean, I've definitely had that thought where, we talked about, potentially of creating stuff up until we're 100 and, writing out the the train of life.
Yeah.
But I think that's something that is almost, it makes me a little hopeful as a writer. I don't know how you or Ron feel about this, or even David as a colorist, but the idea that, 50 years after I'm gone, might be some kid reading one of my books. I think that's great.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. There is something about holding something that you created in your hands, knowing that, for one, I mean, and you guys all know this feeling of, I just want to create stuff. Well, creating stuff is hard, man. And not only that, but I've got the competing Netflix queue constantly hanging over me, just saying how much easier it would be if I did that instead.
Right.
So if I can actually bite the bullet, push through all my distractions, and actually come up with something physical that I'm holding, that I'm like, you know what? I don't know if this will amount to anything in the eyes of the world, but it sure means a lot to me. So
absolutely,
it's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think writing becomes an obsession. It's a blessing and a curse in one, right? Mm-hmm. When you have that talent, that storytelling talent, and over the years, I personally began to understand what it is. I'm still learning more every day, every time I write something new. But I was talking to somebody at a con recently, and we talking about the sensibilities of writing, and especially comics. And the idea being is it's not about the mechanics. All right. I mean, you can teach people the mechanics. You can teach them narrative, plotting, grammar, all that good stuff. All right. That you learn in high school and college writing classes. But the ability to weave a story, all right, something out of nothing from your imagination, all right, get it down there, inspire an artist from a different sensibility, i.e., graphic form, and together between the two of you, develop and produce this thing that wasn't there before. I mean, that's a gift, and you can't teach that. I don't know about you, but over the years, I have had experiences with certain artists who basically came from the commercial art field. All right. I knew one gentleman who taught art at a college in Florida, and we met at a convention, and he was fascinated by the whole comics thing, the graphic thing, right? and asked if there was any way at all maybe we could do something together. At which point, intrigued by it, I've seen his sketching, I've seen his artwork, his paintings, right? And again, the guy's a professional artist. So I wrote a short script. I think it was 5 or 6 pages long after the con, sent it to him, right? I think it took him almost 4 months to draw it. And when it was done, he was so upset with it because it was static. He couldn't get the concept of the flow of how the pages have to be composed and whatever, blah, blah, blah. Thanked me for the experience, giving him the shot at it, but said, this is way harder than I ever thought possible, and it's not for me. And voila, the same thing applies to writing comics. It's not for everybody, right? I mean, you put your ego on the back burner because it's a visual media. You got to create that bare bones story. Hopefully it's solid enough, again, like I said, to inspire your artist. But ultimately, people are going to buy the book to look at the art. Then they'll read the story, all right? If you got sucky art, the best story in the world is not going to save it. Not going to happen, all right? So, I mean, again, we put ourselves through this. We could be off writing novels and saying, hey, that's all on me, and I don't have to worry about any of this. Man, there's something about, again, that synergy between an artist and a writer. It's such a rush when it works and when you produce something, like you said, eventually holding it in your hands. I don't know about your feelings, but when I write a script, I see that in my head, send it out to whatever artist I'm working with. Then the pages start coming back. And honestly, mostly 9/10 of the time, it's way better than even I envision in my head. And that's a rush that I have never, ever grown weary of. Next thing I write next week will get me just as excited as when I was, 13 years old and a comic book junkie.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So I guess you were talking about the artwork. So you've got the same art team that you had on the first series?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
It is. Roland, man, actually just kind of showed me the ropes as to how to go about finding artists, and I got on penciljack.com and I said, hey guys, I've got a new idea for a comic, and it's largely written, and it's a paying gig, so just this is what it's like a government conspiracy / superhero story. Is anyone interested? And it was cool. I got art samples from all the way across the world, Ukraine, South America, and some of these were so good. I'm like, I don't know if my story's good enough to sustain this art. And yet, I still eventually I settled on Lewis, and he knew Leandro, who is the colorist, and Lewis is the penciler and inker, and yeah, I started showing him the script, and he started pumping out pages, and I'm like, wow, this is the real deal. That was probably for me one of the best feelings about the whole thing is, okay, I can talk and I can write, but now I have created. It's a real thing. It's not just a concept in my head anymore. It's something that people can look at and go, hey, this is real. I read comics. This is a real comic. So yes, that's the kind of feeling I wish I could bottle up. Yeah, so
it's crazy. It's fun. There was a site which just, I think, went down in the last year or so. That's been around for a long time. I'm trying to remember now because I'm going to draw a blank on it. But there was a website put up by a letterer in Massachusetts called Digital Webbing.
Yes, that was what I was thinking of.
Right, and that was up for many, many years. And it was one of those kind of things where creators could get together online and produce projects or whatever. If you were a writer looking for an art team, or vice versa, you were an artist looking for a writer, a letterer, inker, or whatever. And just to go along with the discussion we're having here now, about 2 or 3 years ago, I'm sitting around in my office one day, and I'm not working on a particular project, right? and I come up with this wonky little horror story that's like 4 or 5 pages long. I said, what the heck? So I sat down and wrote the script. And the more I thought about it, I said, what the heck? So I go to digital webbing and I post and I said, hi, I'm Ron Forty. I'm a professional writer. I've done this little 5-page horror script. And would anybody like a shot at, drawing it, illustrating it? And I said, I'm going to tell you right up front, there's no money here. I'm not going to pay anybody a cent. I did this for fun. But if somebody sends me some art that I think works and we get the thing drawn and illustrated, I will find a black and white anthology series to get it published for you. All right. So I put that up. Within 24 hours, and like you said, because of the internet today, right? And the whole world's just one neighborhood. Suddenly I've got like 6, queries popping up in my email. And I'm looking through them, and like yourself, I mean, some are amateurs, right? Some of them got so much talent, I just can't believe it. And these are young guys and girls just, wanting to get into the business. So ultimately, I picked one person for that particular story. I figured suited it, but wrote a couple of the others and said, hey, look, I might do this every now and then. Okay, if I keep your information. So ultimately, I think over the 3-year period, I ended up writing and getting illustrated 22 of these little shorts. Got them published in various places, and then my business partner and buddy, artist Rob Davis, got a hold of me one day and said, how many of those things have you done? I said, about 22. He said, let's self-publish them. So we collected them a couple of years ago, self-published again through Kablam and Barry Gregory. And we put out a little thing called Ron Fortier's Tales of the Macabre, right, with me playing Uncle Creepy on the front cover or whatever. And it's 25 little shorts, all right? And when I sell that at cons, and the artists were able to, jump in and buy whatever copies they wanted for their own shows or whatever. But the fun of that to me has been when people pick it up off the table, I tell them how it came about and then say, look through the various different stylings. There's 22 different artists, no 2 draw exactly the same. I mean, the range is ridiculous. From realistic photo art to cartoony art to halfway in between exaggeration or whatever. There's so much talent out there. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't draw my way out of a paper bag, but I don't have to. So that's the cool part about the whole thing. You're right. Collaborating is just, it's a lot of fun. And having a good idea is great, but having someone make something really cool out of it is even better. So,
wow, absolutely right. I don't know about yourself, but I mean, by the time I got to high school, I had that itch, like, hey, I want to get into comics. I want to work into comics. All right. And prior to getting into high school, I was like making my own little sketches and doodles at home and making my own little printed comic book things, 2 or 3 pages of this or that, right, with the most ridiculous heroes and villains and whatever. But in high school, I literally ran into other students and friends who could sketch and draw, and by then I'd come to the realization that whatever sketching skills I might have were rudimentary at the best. Okay, I mean, there was just no way I was going to reach that level. All right, of the guys I was reading in those days, and to date myself, man, I was like 13 years old when Spider-Man came along and Fantastic Four. So I got to live and experience fandom in the birth of the Silver Age. And those were heady days, let me tell you, all right? Every other week, every other month, there was a new title. Marvel not only revitalized the industry, but it shook up DC across the street. Because suddenly they had real competition. And Julie Schwartz was able to kick their writers and artists up another notch and level. And suddenly we were getting a new Flash and a new Green Lantern. So it was a great time to be a comic book fan, right? But again, in school, it's like, man, no way I'm going to be an artist, professional artist. I just haven't got that, right? But of course, the light bulb goes on. Well, hey, wait a minute. They need writers, right? And that was it. That was turn along and focus, laser focus on taking any kind of writing class I could take, any kind of English class, all the way up through college, taking classes in Irish poetry, journalism, belonging to the journalism club, all right, and all those kind of things, just honing my skills to hopefully someday be able to break into the market as a writer. And it's the same advice I give, young people I meet at cons today, the same thing, all right? Get an education, learn what writing's about, learn what storytelling's about. If you love the media and you're a real fan, then I'm going to guess you have that intuition of being able to do this. But again, doesn't mean, to be a slacker and not learn what good storytelling is all about.
Absolutely. I talked about before about it. I feel like most creatives have that moment where you're enjoying your thing, you're enjoying your interest, and then that moment happens where you're like, wait, somebody had to make this. I could make this. So Brent, for you, what was that moment where you were, reading the comic or watching a movie and you're like, holy crap, someone writes that?
You know what's weird? Okay. I've never actually told this story before. Okay, so I was in high school, and you guys remember Marvel Age? It was like a book that it wasn't a comic. It was like Marvel's newsletter in comic.
Right. Yeah.
And it was really fun, and I remember they put out an issue that was like a preview of what was going to come out the following year. And I got to West Coast Avengers was out, and it was a pretty good book, and I was an Avengers fan, and so that was cool. And the Vision and the Scarlet Witch had just, I think, joined the team, and I loved the Vision and the Scarlet Witch, and I was going to buy everything they were in. And I was like, okay, so I guess I'm a fan of this book. And then I read that John Byrne was taking over, or that he had already taken over. I can't remember which. Anyway, and I remember this. He said, in the upcoming year, I am going to kind of mess around with the West Coast Avengers, but I'm going to mess with the Vision like crazy. And I remember reading those words, and it was like my brain just suddenly went on fire, because I was like, wait a minute, he is going to mess with my guy? And then I thought, anybody could mess with my guy. Well, I could mess with my guy if I wanted to. And I remember it was like my heart was pumping wildly. This is just right before John Byrne turned the Vision pale white and totally destroyed Vision and the Scarlet Witch. And I was like, I never liked what he did with him. But in that moment, I remember just thinking, creators make these books. I wonder if I could be a creator. And I remember where I was. I remember I was in my room. I was sitting on my bed when I read this. But it was just this revolutionary moment. Wow, this is a real thing. And I wonder if I could do that. So, yeah, there you go. So I must have been like 16 or 17 at the time. I'm a little older than that now. It took me a while to actually put that into practice, but better late than never, I guess. So
yeah. I feel like writing is also one of the interesting creative pursuits, and that it's a lot of traditional media, but writing in particular, I feel like you never really hear someone until they're already well past retirement age, unless you have like rare exception like Brandon Sanderson or whatever. But Robert Jordan, like, you got the wheel of time, and the guy was getting ready to kick the bucket.
Yeah.
So I think we're coming on a good clip here, but you definitely have already put out a number of books and are not just doing Kayless, but also doing Cape Town, as you said, and you've also, I believe, worked in film and a few other things.
Yeah, that's kind of where I got a start, was writing screenplays and getting some shorter films produced, and the comic writing is it's not totally different from writing for film, but it sure is a lot easier to produce, because you write for film, you're already by the time you find someone to bankroll your work and people to collaborate, people who have their own artistic sensibilities, then you're lucky if whatever you come out with resembles at all what you started out with. But comics are different. Comics really, you're just collaborating with basically one other person who may or may not want to add their own spin on it or just do what you want. So it's really up to you. But yeah.
That's one of the fun things about Kayless is that I haven't read the first series, and I have my collection for the third series pre-ordered already. So for Kids Night, I already have my collection pre-ordered. So looking forward to that. But the special effects budget, if this were to be a movie, would be somewhere in the scope of this would probably be like a legendary level film at least.
Yeah,
you need to find well.
I wonder, maybe next year AI can make you do it all at once. So, but yes, you're right. I mean, Roland has said this over and over. Comics are great. You have an unlimited special effects budget. And it's true because I got a lot of things blowing up in space and a lot of guys getting shot, bullets bouncing off, all this and that. I'm like, yeah, that's right, man. I don't have to figure out how to make this work. Oh, I just do. My artist to draw it, and he does. It's awesome. So.
Well, let me ask you this, because obviously Kayless is a science fiction out there story. But at the same time, I'm always intrigued. Do you still find yourself, when you, in hindsight, look back and read something you've done before, okay, find that you put elements of yourself in the characters?
Yeah, I do. One thing that I'm a big believer in is the idea that if you really want to tell a story, and I'm not inventing anything new. I'm just kind of voicing what my own conviction on it is. Really good characters are what are going to make your story really stick around. And comics for so long have basically survived us on this idea that you don't really have to build a great character. Like Spider-Man, he's the same character he's been since 1963. You just need to stick him in some fun adventures and just once again point out that he's broke and no one respects him and with great power, etc. But if I'm really going to want to tell a story that I think is worth telling, I need to have a character that thinks like I do and makes decisions and has values that are similar to my values. So, like for example, the main hero of Kayless, his name is Scott Anders. He's the astronaut that fell to Earth and now has kind of a limited invulnerability. Through backstory I tell throughout all these issues, you find out that his dad was abusive and beat up him and his mom when he was a kid, and that he actually joined the army when World War II broke out just to get away from his dad. But by getting away from his dad, he could no longer get between his dad and his mom ends up murdering his mother. And after the war, when he goes to confront his dad, he ends up killing his dad in jail, which then has the consequence of the CIA that had recruited him back when it was the OSS in World War II. Now has a means of keeping him on their payroll when he wanted to leave and just be a normal citizen. I mean, none of those things have actually happened to me. I didn't live in the 40s. I've never been in a war. I've never been a spy. I actually got along really well with my parents. So everything's great there. But what I find is I do have moments where I'm like, I regret that I was faced with a conflict and I ran. Or I just got really mad instead of trying to understand someone else. That I do have regrets about past decisions that I have worked for employers who were willing to exploit me a little bit instead of looking out for me. You know what I mean? And all of those actually do find their way into this comic book, which is fantastic.
Right. Without, almost subliminally, right? It's like
Yeah.
without a conscious effort, because you're creating a character, but then little bits and pieces of who you are have a way of just creeping into that. I find that fascinating. Myself and artist Gary Cotto, I mean, for over almost 40 years now, have been doing this series of a comedy superhero called Mr. Jigsaw, Man of 1,000 Parts, right? Who lives and operates out of Portland, Maine. And he's this naive guy who thinks that falling apart and putting himself back together again mentally like a jigsaw puzzle is like the coolest superhero, power in the world. When again, like I said, it's absolutely silly. All right. So in writing him, I wanted to make him this innocent, Pollyanna, naive guy. And that's what we've done. And the basic concept and conceit of the story is whenever he faces a challenge or a villain or whatever, he gets to win by the help of his friends. And his wonky powers, show themselves, but it's always that, concept of surrounding himself with good people who admire him and want him to be that hero. Okay. So, you write like, I don't know, 30, 40 stories of Mr. Jigsaw over the last 30 years. And I'm at a convention one day and I get asked this same question that we're talking about. Somebody said, well, how much of you is in the character of Charlie Grant? And it made me take a moment, pause and think. And then I began to understand and went, you know what? I think Charlie is me without all my bad habits. All the negative bad things about me, short temper or impatience or anxiety or this or that. He doesn't have any of those things. He's probably what I'd like to be when I'm writing, all right? Maybe if that means being naive, but he's just lovable guy that everybody likes, all right? So yeah, he's a goal that maybe I'm trying to achieve as I live, all right? He's teaching me something about what this world's about.
I'll admit I'm working on a novel right now, and the characters that I have in there look so close to not necessarily me, but me at a certain point, or they will reach conclusions that I still wrestle with. So in a weird way, writing is kind of self-therapy.
Yeah.
And that's probably a good thing. I mean, it's constructive and it's cheaper than So
and we don't have to go out and really kill people. We can do it on the page.
Yeah, exactly. And again, any story worth really reading involves characters who have these relatable qualities that everybody can, on some level, can understand. And I mean, Spider-Man took the world by storm. I'm not going to bag on Spider-Man because, I mean, look where he came from. All these comics were about these guys in tights, just all these great powers, and yet here comes this kid who suddenly just feels guilty all the time because of how he let his uncle die accidentally because he just wanted the brass ring. And everyone's looking at each other and going, I totally would have done everything Spider-Man did, which means I probably would feel really guilty all the time. Suddenly we've got a lightning in a bottle, and it's almost like everyone wants to tell that kind of story. Not someone who's amazing with their powers, but someone who really feels on some level what we're all feeling all the time.
I mean, the thing, and I'm speaking from experience. I mean, I was a 13-year-old nerd buying that first issue, all right? And there's no way I didn't identify with Peter Parker. Are you kidding? I wasn't the high school jock, whatever. I was the guy with his nose in a book, reading comic books and whatever, all right? So all his foibles and anxieties, I totally got. And to me, over the years, looking back on it, that was really the genius of Stan Lee of looking on everything that happened prior, whereas all the kid heroes you had were ultimately sidekicks.
Mm.
But it was Spider-Man. He wasn't a sidekick. He was the hero. He was the focus of the story. Yeah, I mean, that it became a hit, no surprise whatsoever. And then Lee does the exact same thing with the Fantastic Four, i.e., okay, they're not a group of trained professionals all coming together to fight evil. They're a dysfunctional family.
Mm-hmm.
Mom and dad, junior and older brother, the thing, or whatever, right? It's just, again, he was taking real people, dressing him up in this superhero persona, but they were people you identified with, that you recognized immediately. You know, and what were they doing in the role of heroes? Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll admit, I have had this thought. What would it be like to be Reed Richards and knowing that you basically screwed your friend for life by not shielding your spaceship? What would it be like to be the Thing, knowing that, yeah, you're telling your best friend, it's okay, I totally forgive you, and yet still having to wake up and realizing my friend has done this to me? And what would it be like to be Johnny Storm, watching all this and going, I'm an idiot. I do not belong with these people, and yet they tolerate my existence. Or Sue Storm going, I'm in love with this super scientist who kind of reminds me of my dad and is smarter than everyone on Earth. And for some reason, they all feel like he has to solve their problems. And yet he's also supposed to be my fiance, and I'm thinking these things today after having read Fantastic Four for decades. How is that even possible? That is serious character building right there, where I'm still questions. All this time later, it's amazing work.
Well, and that's the thing. I really sometimes I hear younger writers, not older, writers who've been around and been published and understand the business, but you get younger writers going, well, what's the point of writing Fantastic Four? What's the point of writing Superman or Batman?
Mm-hmm.
Because they've been done to death. There's nothing new to do, right? And I just laugh at that. I just think that's absolutely ridiculous. Okay, that's not them. That's you. There's still tons of potential in those characters. That's the way they were crafted. It's up to you to find it. All right, it's up to you to find that story that nobody else has told yet. And you just did that, brilliantly. All right, those would be great story arcs for Fantastic Four today. Absolutely.
Yeah, I've always thought that. The X-Men with Hickman and what they did to kind of rejuvenate the franchise was a great choice. But in particular, Fantastic Four, speaking of these things of finding new ways to breathe life into a character that's existed and not just regurgitating the same stuff over and over again, but in a different super suit.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think this is probably the best example of taking a long-running character, long-running series, and adding in a new dynamic to it was when they gave Sue and Reed a kid. Mm-hmm. And now they're exploring this point of not just how to be super parents, but they're having the reality of our kid is very different in a world that already doesn't like different. On top of that, they have very scary potential in a world that doesn't like that. How do we encourage the kid, but also protect them?
Yeah.
The way they explore that and navigate that has just been great storytelling.
One of my favorite stories ever, all right, was when Frank Miller shows up at Marvel. All right. He's this kid from the backwoods of Vermont, breaks into the business, gets into Marvel, and basically gets asked, is there any particular title he'd like to work on? Now, at the time he gets there, the lowest selling book in their catalog was Daredevil. They were that close to canceling it. And that's what he asked Stan Lee. What's the one book that you're going to scrap? All right. A little genius going on here, all right? And they say Daredevil. Because he now knows, okay, they really don't care what I do with this book. All right. He takes over Daredevil. All right. Within 6 months, it's one of the hottest selling books they have. He flips it up over onto its head backwards. All right. creates Elektra, gives him a whole different past, the whole redemption thing, everything. All right. It's just brilliant on his part. Okay. And so that's what I'm getting at. It's just like, there's no character that is ever, at the end.
Mm-hmm.
There's always more to tell. That's the challenge of the writer. Okay. Find that other story, that other side that nobody else has explored yet.
Mm.
Okay.
Which is hard to do, and I'll be honest, a lot of the IPs in comics today, I'm just not really interested in. I feel like I've read the stories already. Fantastic Four, interestingly enough, I think is a good exception. Ryan North is writing it right now, and he has found a new dynamic, which is tell these small stories of this family. They're not going into the negative zone. They're living in Arizona. They're not trying to wrestle with Franklin's godlike powers. They're actually trying to get their kids through high school. And what's weird is it totally works because I've never seen anything like it before.
There you go.
And it's like, there you go, man. That's the key.
Absolutely. Well, that's one of the things where I thought we'll get that. I have a few questions here as we come to a time where I thought that, what's it called? When the X-Men did their Krakow run, they had the color-coded books. What was the yellow one? But the one that was mostly just about the Quiet Council politicking and Exodus being like, hey guys, my entire life before this was politicking a rebel group. Like, how do we handle a nation state in a way that doesn't turn us into the bad guys and also doesn't turn us into like a bunch of infighting? I'm like, that's a great direction for the X-Men, because you've made so many good bad guys that we want to see become good guys, and now you put them in the room and no one likes working with each other.
Right. I mean, one cool thing about Hickman is he does that kind of writing. He's very about geopolitical motivations, big empires. How do they work together? Like Fantastic Four would have been wasted in that scenario. But X-Men were perfect because the X-Men are about questions of, how does your mutation not just affect you as a person, but affect you as a species? How does it affect not just your neighbors, but like Russia or America's, historic opponents? Do you become your own country? I mean, again, like the Avengers would be wasted on that. The Avengers don't have anything to do with that. It's like he was a perfect writer to handle that kind of story with that kind of native subject matter. Right. And the X-Men were a great fit for that. So,
okay. Well, speaking of the perfect writer for the perfect story, again, Kayless, ACHILLES HAS LAND number 3 is currently available for pre-order on fundmycomic.com or on the front page. The links are in the chat. So a bit of a off-topic question here, but Brent, we did see that you went to Japan recently.
Yeah.
And follow on social media a little bit. Does that mean that in a future issue of Kayless in the future volume, we will be getting mechas or Gundams?
Oh man. You're gonna make me change the whole thing. And yet I'm kind of thinking, well, I wouldn't hate that, I'll admit it. Actually, I wonder if I could. All right, you know what? Give me a couple months. I might.
Sure.
I'm actually joining you guys, I think, on a hopefully semi-regular basis on this show, because the time slot works pretty well for me. So maybe I'll have a better answer next week.
We'll start the Brent Mecha watch.
Yeah.
But how was your trip to Japan? As someone who also writes a lot, was it a moment where it was this break away from writing? I need to take my brain and put it in a jar and step away from what I'm doing my day to day, or did you do what I normally do, which is you step into a new environment and suddenly get flooded with new ideas?
Oh, okay. This will sound like I'm being very self-congratulatory. I'm really trying not to, but as a writer, I find that if I'm going to really produce anything, I need to adjust to whatever environment I'm in and then make myself write anyway. So I did get some good writing done over there, but I will say it is a pretty inspirational place.
Yeah.
It's not so foreign that I felt like I was stepping into, underwater or something, but it is different enough that that it was pretty inspirational, I will say, and they love comics over there. Obviously, you guys know that. So
Yeah.
it's fun to see, comics displayed in bookstores in ways that they're harder to find here, and it doesn't seem as respectable, which makes you think, well, what does anyone actually know? They're incredibly respectable, but in Japan they've figured that out a little more. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Cool.
But I recommend it to anyone who ever wants to go. It's great. The plane flights aren't great, but you'll get over it. So.
Yeah. Probably a long time. All right. So for our last question here, before we get to our cool down, I'm going to bring back kind of the classic because this is about your book. And as creators, we are usually just regurgitating everything we've taken in, passed through our own filter, and then made our own. So recently, what have you been reading, watching, and playing?
Reading, watching, and playing. Okay. Well, I've been reading. I already mentioned for comics. I've been reading Fantastic Four, and I've actually been reading Invincible, which I had never read the end of it, and now I'm kind of going through that again. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
I just finished a novel called Project Hail Mary, which is pretty good, and will be made into a movie, I've heard. It's by the guy who wrote The Martian, so that's pretty good. And I'm reading a novel by Joe Hill right now called Heart-Shaped Box, which is pretty interesting. He's the guy who wrote Lock and Key, which I think is one of the best comics of the 21st century. What am I watching? I am watching. My wife and I decided before watching the new season of Daredevil that we had to watch all the old seasons, so we're almost done with that. And we're kind of watching The Last of Us, and one of my favorite comedies is Community, and we are going through that. That's a lot of fun. And I'm trying to get it out to the movies as much as I can. I just saw the movie Bring Her Back, which is a horror movie by the guys who did Talk to Me, right? That was cool. Anyway, yes, that was quite fun. What am I playing? I'm playing God of War Ragnarok, which has a surprisingly strong story, and I don't know how it's going to end. So I'm like, ooh, that's kind of unusual as far as games go. So. Yeah, that is more than I have time to actually engage with it all. So I'm lucky when I get to one of those.
Yeah, that's kind of the way it gets to be sometimes. Okay, well, has there been anything that you want to talk about in regards to Kayless? Kayless is on the number 3, or anything regarding the story that you wanted us to go over tonight while we still have time?
Not really. I would love to hear from people if they're enjoying it, or I'll admit when we came out with the first issue of Kayless back in 2018, I think it was, I was still learning, and it's a little wordier than I would like, but I think it's gotten better over time. But really, I hope that people will read it and will understand the story. It is a little bit more complicated than I think I probably would have wanted to stretch over all this time, but I think I'm trying to make it coherent, and each issue would be a self-contained story. So I'm hoping I achieved that. I'd love any feedback that anyone has. And Tim, like you mentioned, it's we are wrapping up the crowdfunding on that. So If anyone's interested, strike while that iron is hot. As you can see, we've got a little ways to go. But yeah, I think it's fun. I think independent comics are just something that is really outside any mainstream you can imagine. And therefore, it's kind of just worth your time. Give it a spin.
It really is kind of like the new frontier of storytelling, like that in independent games. Yeah.
Yeah. The fact is, it's a medium that is really being promoted as a labor of love by anyone. Yeah, I remember a friend telling me one of my colleagues asked if I was going to quit my job and become a world famous comic book writer. And I told him, I don't actually think those exist. So maybe Robert Kirkman, but the exception that proves the rule. So yeah, there are comics, there are writers. No one's trying to make it big. They're just trying to tell a story. And I'm just really glad. I'm really excited that I've gotten the opportunity to do that. So yeah,
absolutely. My answer to that question is always, I feel like that'd have to be something like Sir Alan Moore, but then you're a professional recluse who sometimes writes.
Yeah. Wonder what else he's up to sometimes.
So you before we end here, you did also mention about how we started in 2018, which is wild to think about that. We've gone through a whole pandemic on a show together. And
one or two things have happened.
So learning something that I've also found as I continue to write and work with different people is that my descriptions, the actual text that I put in the script, is becoming. I mean, it will always fluctuate based on the artist, but for the most part, it's becoming more and more condensed, which is, generally a good thing. Brevity is a great skill for a writer. For a book like Soul Sending, I'll still give like big detailed descriptions, but for something like Dracula with Rob Davis, who's been in the game longer than I've been alive, I feel like I could give him the script and smoke signals and he'd still make great art. How has your writing evolved over that process?
Well, that's a good question. In part because I write Kayless differently than I write Cape Town. When I started writing Kayless, I basically wrote it more or less like a movie script, except instead of scenes, I wrote pages with panels, and I described each panel with enough detail that Lewis would understand what I was talking about. And so I would write a description, and then he'd come back with it. And if he hadn't quite nailed it, I would point out a couple of things. Often I would find that what he wrote was better than my description. And I really, I also realized that I didn't want to be basically a jerk. So a lot of times, if he came back with something and I didn't feel it was quite right, my next thought was, I wonder if I could adjust my story slightly to accommodate what I'm already seeing. And I haven't had to do that very much. And when I do, I think it probably actually made the story slightly stronger, which it helps to have a really good idea of the story you're trying to tell so that you can massage it a little one way or the other without it breaking the story. But then there's Cape Town. And that was a little different because Justin Franklin is the artist on that and actually told me that he wanted to try working off a script that was written differently. Namely, instead of doing a panel-by-panel description, that I basically just said, page 5, seismic, and this book's about two superheroes, Seismic and Recon. So he said, can you just tell me more of a general idea, and then I'll just interpret it my own way. So I thought, I'll try anything once. So I wrote a script where it would be like, page 5, Seismic and Recon argue. And then Recon leaves in a huff and Seismic smiles. And then I just wrote the dialogue that I wanted to be on that page. And he would just kind of interpret it with how many panels he wanted to do. And it worked out fairly well. In a weird way, I feel like my writing, if anything, had to evolve or it had to be nimble in the way it was done. And you guys have heard there's the DC way and then there's the Marvel way, and I'm sure there's variations of both. And for me, it's almost like do whatever helps your artist to understand what you're going for, but yet still have the creativity to interpret it any way he wants or she wants. And that's kind of just the way I've proceeded from here. And it's helped me in part just because it makes me realize I really have to know what I'm talking about if I'm hoping to get anything useful here. And that's worked out pretty good so far.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Well, we're coming up on our time here, so we're going to wrap things up. But before we do, any last thoughts, any takeaways you want people reading the Kayless? Any takeaways or things you want them to look out for?
Things I want them to look out for. All right. I'm going to give you a little spoiler. Okay. So in this issue, Scott meets a character named Beneface who claims that he built the Kayless Rift. And the spoiler is he did. And Scott will one day realize that he may not be able to ever go back to this place. So, yeah.
Okay.
How's that?
I think it's great. Okay. Well, we'll be back next week, and I'm not sure when the next time we will do a sprint, but it will be hopefully, join us on a recurring or semi-recurring basis, and we'll see you as the year continues. I need to pull up our calendar because Roland was great and helped cover our topics while I was dealing with family stuff.
Yeah, is everything okay there?
Yeah, it's been interesting. It's been good, but I think we're on the other end of the woods for the most part. Yeah. The next thing I have coming up is redoing my father's medicated enrollment, which at least it's no longer the first time.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. We'll get there. All right. Okay. I'm getting the right email. Okay. Next week, we'll continue on from our block we did last month, and which is creating fantasy. So we'll be talking about creating a realistic fantasy setting. So thoughts and considerations with the world building and the things you need to do to make the world feel alive and breathing and not just like it exists only for the story. Okay. So I'm talking about not just writing, but also visual elements as well, because comics are a visual medium. Make sure to check out Wednesday Wham and Sour Sunday and their respective days, times linked in the description somewhere around. But until that time,
as ever, we say,
make mine Silverline. Brent got there.
Hi, I'm Greg Horn. Make mine Silverline.